Today I'm going to talk about an interview between the Global Times of China and the Russian ambassador to China, whose name is Denisov. He talked about the balance of tripods, the world order of Russia, China, and the US. And he also talked about his past experience of learning Chinese, and at the time when he was assigned to China as the ambassador in the year 2013. And now let's get to the details of this interview. The Global Times asked about the ambassador's opinion about the Communist Party of China for this centenary anniversary of the founding of the party. And Denisov said that ever since the 70s of last century, when he was assigned to Beijing at first, he experienced a huge and dramatic development in China in the past 50 years. And he has eyewitnessed the huge progress made under the leadership of the Communist Party of China. And he realized that China's success is a result of many important factors, such as the diligence of the Chinese people and the correct decisions made by the leadership of China. And for the Communist Party of China, this is an important year. After this year, China will have another centenary anniversary, which is the anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. The ambassador said that his age might not allow him to see that day when he kept alive, but he could imagine that the Communist Party of China won the support of the vast majority of the Chinese people and the important role it plays in China. And he said that he realizes that there's a song in China called "There's no new China without the Communist Party." And he wants to extend the congratulations to all Chinese. The Global Times asked that some Russian people have negative opinions towards the Soviet Communist Party and the Soviet Union. And they asked whether they will have a kind of comparison between the Communist Party of China and the Soviet communists. And Denisov said that Russia is a great country, and its people have diversified thoughts, and is very natural. And he believes that this having the those kind of Russian is only a minority of the whole Russian people who have the negative opinion. Well, admittedly, the Soviet Union has lots of shortcomings and weakness. But for those people who have experienced the era of USSR, they still are nostalgic about lots of wonderful things during that time, and many positive factors. A survey conducted in Russia exposed that most people in Russia who have a negative opinion towards the Soviet Union are the youngsters in Russia. They were born under the dissolvement of the Soviet Union, and they didn't eyewitness the real situation during that era. So they have different opinions. But this the opinion basically based on the policies of USSR at that time, but not really aimed at the Communist Party. And the ambassador has his personal opinion towards the Soviet Union and the Soviet communists. And he said that if the Soviet Communist Party had a figure like Deng Xiaoping in China, and their country would have had a very different path for development. However, such a person never existed in Russia, so that's the thing we have now. And from the reaction, the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we can see a lot of strong points and weakness of different social systems. And now we can see that the Chinese economy have got out of the crisis caused by the pandemic last year, and this shows that the development of China has showed a great vigor, and that reminds him of a saying in China, which is that the practice, the real action, is the only standard to test the truth. And then Global Times asked that President Putin recently have said that the U.S. is confidently and firmly walking on the old path of the Soviet Union. And he said that the U.S. has a typical problem, which is that they are extremely confident about themselves with their indefinite power. And of course, they're making the problems that they cannot handle, just like the old Soviet Union. So, how do you understand this notion taken from President Putin? Ambassador Denisov said that all the people who are keen on the current policies in the U.S. Do not oppose the opinion from President Putin. And the ambassador's understanding to this notion is that President Putin is not foreseeing the fate of the U.S., which is to repeat the fate of the Soviet Union, and he does not mean that he would love to see that. He is just reminding people that this risk does exist. And lots of political elite in the U.S. have not fully realized this point. Today, we cannot imagine a world without the U.S. The U.S. has plays dominant roles in many fields, such as economy, culture, and technology. And we cannot deny this fact. But the U.S. also needs to realize that they are not the only country in the world. They need to think and respect. They need to consider and respect the reality and the benefits of other countries. So the President Putin is to remind the U.S. not to make the mistake that the Soviet Union made in the past. Now Global Times asked, as scheduled, the Russian President Putin will meet with the U.S. President Biden in Geneva on the June the 16th. And what do you expect for this meeting? And are you optimistic about any possible improvement between the bilateral relationship between Russia and the U.S. During the term of Biden president? Denisov said that they welcome all their measures and the actions which can mitigate the current intensive situation and competition. But they are very careful about the expectation of the bilateral relationship between the two countries, between Russia and the U.S., especially under the current very tense background between the two nations. This is the first meeting between the two presidents after Biden came into power, and the possibility to solve the critical problems between the two countries is very low. But one result which can be expected, that it can provide some conditions, make some criteria to pave the way to solve the problems in the future. Global Times asked, there's an analyst which believes that the Biden administration might take some measures or might adopt the strategy which is to mitigate the relationship with Russia, so that they can concentrate on China. with focus, without Russian interference. So under this background, Russia will keep away from China and get closer to the U.S. Do you think it's true? Ambassador Denisov said that this kind of view is too short-sighted. It does not happen, and he believes that the Russians are smarter than what American believes. Global Times asked that recently there have been lots of mutual visits between the high senior officials of the Russia and the China. And the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov visited China after the high-level strategic talk between China and the U.S. in Anchorage of Alaska, and also Yang Jiechi, the Politburo Committee member, visited Moscow after the Russia and the U.S. foreign minister meeting in Iceland. So are these two visits were specially made, and do they expose any kind of signal? Ambassador Denisov said that recently there are very close diplomatic relations between cooperations between Russia and China, and this special arrangement is not out of coincidence, since we need time to arrange the time and the technical preparation to arrange this very high level mutual visit. But of course, it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the two countries to interact with each other after each of us have met the U.S. counterparts. So this is very helpful, and this is helpful for the senior diplomats of the two countries to deeply discuss what had been talked about with the U.S. counterparts. The Global Times asked whether China and Russia will communicate and check with each other for cooperation with the stance towards the U.S. Ambassador Denisov said that these two visits are very short, and the agenda was very limited, but both sides also talked about a series of topics very detailedly, including the sharpest questions, the most urgent issues. In fact, not only these two high senior level meetings, and as well as the past meetings between President Xi Jinping and President Putin, the political dialogues between the two countries, there's nothing to be evaded, no topic to be evaded. We would like to talk about with the Chinese side after the summit meeting between Russia and the U.S. If there was anything related to China to talk about, we are willing to communicate and discuss with the Chinese counterpart. Everybody knows that there's no alliance between Russia and China, but both parts take a similar stance on a series of diplomatic questions. Global Times asks that the competition and the conflict between China and the U.S. is now being escalated, and just in case that there was a military conflict between China and the U.S., what stance will Russia take? And President and Ambassador Denisov said that there will be no answer for this question, since he firmly believes that there will be no armed conflict between China and the U.S. And just like the fact that there will be no armed conflict between Russia and the U.S., since such conflicts can annihilate the human race. So there's no meaning for any kind of stance. But if you are asking me about the international situation and the judgment towards the critical questions, then it's obvious that the Russian stance is closer to China's. In recent years, the U.S. have put sanctions to both Russia and China at the same time. So, although the U.S. Is not happy with both countries in different aspects, but the purpose is the same, which is to defeat the competing rivals. So obviously, Russia cannot accept this attitude from the U.S. So the ambassador hopes that the tripled relationship, the tripled situation, Russia, China, and the U.S. can keep balance. The Global Times asks that there is some analysis believing that in recent years, Russia, the U.S., and some other countries are trying to make color revolutions in Russia and China, and they are trying to make the chaos of geopolitics in the neighboring countries, neighboring areas of these two countries, Russia and China. So facing this situation, what kind of a cooperation can China and Russia have? Ambassador Denisov said that this is why I would like to say that the judgment made by Russia and China towards the international situation very similar to each other, and both countries do not want to interfere with the internal affairs of the third country. But in the past years, we have witnessed so many countries that had color revolutions and fell into chaos. And the color revolutions of these countries have their respective reasons. But there's no denying that there are external forces. So in order to avoid the interference of domestic affairs of Russia and China, we need to work together to make some game rules, especially the rules about the safety of information, and to avoid the advanced technology advanced countries to use the internet technology to force its own political agenda to other countries. Recently, there is a new phenomenon in the world called hybrid warfare, and there are no relevant rules in the international society to face this kind of warfare. So on one hand, that the both countries need to work together to avoid the bad information to invade into us, and the other side that although the two countries have enough capability and information and network to counter the color revolution, the neighboring countries and areas are still fragile to this, and they are easily interfered with a massive interference of such in their own countries. So in recent years, the situation in Belarus and Hong Kong are two very good examples. So it is needed to make common rules to defend from the color revolution, and this is for the stability of more countries and areas. Global Times asked that the West have been hyping up the so-called vaccine diplomacy from China and Russia, and they claim that China and Russia export vaccines to seek geopolitics interest. So what is your opinion? Ambassador Denisov said, as far as that he knows, that China has exported provided 0.32 billion COVID-19 vaccines. The vaccines provided by Russia is not as much as the Chinese one, but had also extended the cooperation with 66 countries. San Marino in Europe has already defeated the pandemic with the help of the Sputnik V vaccines from Russia. And at the same time, Russia can also provide the relevant technology and the know-how to those countries which have manufacturing capabilities, so that these countries can produce the vaccines within their own country. So Russia has contacted 25 companies from 14 countries to discuss such cooperation. So we believe that the vaccine acknowledgement process, such as something like a vaccine passport, is better to be resolved in the framework of WHO and other multilateral platforms. Since that Russia and China, both countries, will have the difficulty of being recognized. It is not because of the quality or the protection rate of the vaccines from Russia and China, but some rivals do not wish vaccines from us two countries enter other countries. So they will make barriers, including political tools and unfair competition. So this is one of the so-called vaccine diplomacy sticker is one of the barriers they made. And some countries which have the vaccine nationalism, give priority of vaccination towards their own peoples. Of course, this is not wrong. It's understandable, but they cannot defame other countries' aid of vaccines and stop Chinese and Russian vaccines into third countries. That is wrong. This is a very typical politicized vaccine problem. In addition, the West had made a fake information, fake news of the news called the Chinese made a virus artificially, the Chinese lab exposed the virus, stuff like that. And these are also the examples, good examples of the pandemic, which is politicized. And this is very unfair political information, and this is not the correct attitude to solve this the crisis, a very massive crisis. Lastly, the last question from the Global Times is that they asked the ambassador whether he agrees with the notion that China and Russia have a very different strategic interest. For example, some scholars said that Russia is not very interested in keeping the current international order, but China is the biggest benefactor of the current international order. So China seeks adjusting the order. Ambassador Denisov said that this is a totally incorrect notion. This is something like a black and white. And this is a very extreme judgment for the international situation. And they pose the fake notion that it seems that we only have two choices in front of our eyes: to keep the current international order or to destroy it. But the reality is not like this. Russia and China have their several interests in the global stage and also the regional stage. Of course, it's very natural that these benefits, the interests are not totally the same under all the situation. But if you look at the big picture, if you look at the bigger picture, Russia and China have the same international benefits. So we have the same stance towards most of the international questions. The biggest example is that the voting of the United Nations, the Security Council of the United Nations, the voting from the two countries. Russia and China always vote for the same thing. And international order is not always unchanged. It will change, and the change is actually being accelerated. And we also need reforms of the international order to let it to be more suitable for the current status. But we cannot change it very dramatically. The ambassador disagrees with the viewpoint that Russia and China have very different views towards international order. Actually, both countries are having the same stance for the most important questions and issues. It could be just the differences, the minor differences with some details. So you cannot say that that is the case. So basically, there's no problem between the two countries. Okay, that is the end of the interview. And actually, from the interview, we can see that the relationship between the two countries remains very good, the best in the history. And we also know that Russia and China are good friends to each other, but we are not alliance. It's unlike the US way, the American way to deal with this question. The alliance is not a good thing. Some people, especially some people living in the US allied countries, they believe that the alliance is the best in the world. But if you think about that, the concept of the alliance is for wars. It's for wars. It's not for peace. And we can clearly see that the U.S. forcibly influence other allies, so-called allies, to do the things that is in the interest of the U.S., not in the interest of those countries. So those countries, those so-called U.S. allies, are actually paying a very big price for the loss of their own interest. And this is very unfair, and this is not equality. So the best way to deal with the international politics is not to have the alliance. And we also have a non-alliance movement in the world. And lots of countries actually believe that. And we need to understand what's going on in the world. So we should be optimistic about the future cooperation between China and Russia. And there are still lots of things that two countries can do.